there is a man who never raises his voice. He walks into rooms slowly. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't smile to make you comfortable. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't need to. And somehow, every person in that room adjusts their behavior because of him. Not because of what he said, because of what he didn't say, because of what he didn't do. That man is Thomas Shelby. And what you're about to hear isn't his story. It's the principle behind the story. The principle that has been operating quietly inside every truly powerful person you've ever feared or admired. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Most people are performing constantly. Not on stage, not in movies, in real life. Every conversation you have, every room you enter, every silence you feel the need to fill, you are performing. You are managing perception. You are scanning faces to see if you are being accepted. You are adjusting your tone, your posture, your opinion, based on what you sense the room wants from you. And you don't even notice it anymore because you've been doing it so long it feels like breathing. That performance has a name. It's called neediness. And neediness is the single greatest destroyer of power that exists. Understand what neediness actually is. It is not weakness of character. It is not stupidity. It is not even insecurity, in the shallow sense that word gets used. Neediness is a structural problem. It means your internal state is dependent on external input. It means your emotional system is outsourced. You feel okay only when the world signals back to you that you are okay. You feel confident only when people affirm that you should be confident. You feel safe only when the people around you show signs of accepting you. Your whole psychological architecture is a machine that runs on the reactions of other people. And the moment that supply of approval gets cut off, the machine starts breaking down. Now think about what that looks like from the outside. When you walk into a room needing something from it, needing validation, needing acceptance, needing to be perceived a certain way, people feel it. They don't know they feel it. They cannot articulate it, but they feel it the way you feel a change in air pressure. Something about the energy you carry tells them, this person is seeking something from me. And the moment they sense that, the dynamic shifts. You lose the frame before you've said a word. You have handed your power to the room before you've taken a single step into it. There is a scene, figuratively speaking, that lives in the mind of anyone who has studied Thomas Shelby carefully. He walks in, he sits down, he doesn't fill the silence, he doesn't perform, he doesn't make himself digestible. And what happens? The other person starts talking more, starts explaining themselves, starts seeking his approval. The power has transferred without a single aggressive act, without a threat, without even an argument, simply because one person in that room came in needing nothing, and the other came in needing something. This is the first and most foundational principle of true power. You must genuinely not be running on the approval of your environment. Not appear to be, not pretend to be, genuinely not be. Because the body leaks, the eyes leak, the micro-expressions leak. You can tell yourself you don't care and still vibrate with the frequency of someone who desperately does. And people read that frequency whether they know it or not. The question then is not how do you appear indifferent. The question is how do you actually become it? And that answer begins somewhere colder and more demanding than most people are prepared to go. You have been taught that silence is awkward, that it is the enemy of connection, that good communicators fill space, that the sign of a confident person is someone who can talk to anyone, who can work a room, who can break tension with wit and charisma. And there is some truth to that, but there is a deeper truth that sits underneath it, one that the most powerful people in any room have understood, and the rest have not. Silence is not empty. Silence is architecture. It is structure. It creates shape inside a conversation. It defines where the weight falls. And whoever controls the silence controls the conversation. Think about the last time someone didn't respond immediately after you said something. What happened inside you? You probably started filling the void. You probably added context you didn't need to add, clarified something that didn't need clarification, softened a position you had stated clearly. Why? Because the silence pressed on you. Because the absence of response created pressure, and you bent under that pressure without being asked to bend. Now understand, the person who can sit in that silence without bending, not because they are cold, not because they are performing aloofness, but because they are genuinely at peace in the absence of a signal. That person has just demonstrated something that cannot be faked. They have shown that they are not running on your feedback, that your response or lack of it does not determine their state. And that demonstration is worth more than any argument, any achievement, any title. Thomas Shelby understood this completely. He was not a man of few words because he was unsocial. He was a man who had learned through war, through loss, through the kind of psychological pressure that shatters most people, that words are currency, and currency spent carelessly becomes worthless. Every word he withheld was a word that compounded in value. Every silence he occupied was a space that grew heavier for the person on the other side. This is what you need to understand about your own communication. The compulsive need to fill silence, to explain, to qualify, to add more, to check if you've been understood. That compulsion is costing you authority every single time you give in to it. You are not being clear. You are not being helpful. You are being anxious. And the people you are talking to are reading that anxiety even when they are consciously impressed by your words. Practice the discipline of the incomplete sentence. Say the thing that needs to be said, then stop, breathe, let the air hold it. Do not rush to soften it or supplement it or apologize for it. Let it land. Let the other person process it. Let the silence work. Because the silence after a strong statement is not a vacuum to be filled. It is a pressure that presses the other person toward meaning, toward decision, toward acknowledgement. Silence, wielded correctly, is not indifference to other people. It is indifference to their discomfort. And that distinction is everything. You are not ignoring them. You are refusing to rescue them from the weight of what you just said. And the refusal is respect in its most honest, most demanding form. There is something almost addictive about explaining yourself. When someone misunderstands you, when someone doubts you, when someone questions your decision, the urge to explain, to lay out your reasoning, to make them see it the way you see it, is almost overwhelming. And you have been told your whole life that this is the right thing to do, that good communicators explain, that transparent leaders justify, that honest people give reasons. Here is what nobody tells you. Over-explanation is submission. Every time you explain yourself to someone who has not earned the explanation, you are placing your decision on trial in their court. You are implicitly conceding that their judgment of your choice matters, that their understanding of your reasoning is required for you to feel okay about the decision you made. And the moment you do that, the moment you hand your reasoning over for inspection, you have handed over your authority. This does not mean you should never communicate. It does not mean you should be cryptic or deliberately withhold information that is genuinely needed. It means you need to become extremely precise about the difference between communication and justification. Communication is the transfer of necessary information. Justification is the pursuit of approval dressed up as information transfer. And most of what people call communication is actually justification. Watch the people in your life who carry real weight, the ones who seem to exist at a different frequency. When they make a decision, they do not deliver a TED Talk about it. They say what is going to happen. If there is relevant information you need to execute, they provide it, and then they stop. They do not consult your face to see if you approve. They do not linger waiting for your validation. The decision has been made in a room that does not include your opinion, and your acceptance of it is assumed rather than requested. This is precisely how Thomas Shelby moved through the world. He did not explain his plans to the people who were not supposed to understand them. He did not defend his strategy to those who doubted it. He did not revise his vision because someone in the room looked uncertain. He decided, he acted, and the result spoke, not because he had no opposition, but because he treated that opposition as irrelevant to the execution of the decision. The decision had already been made. The explanation was simply not part of the deal. You need to start making decisions the same way, not arrogant, not carelessly, but with the understanding that the quality of your decision does not improve by becoming more explainable. That authority is not granted by the consensus of people who weren't in the room where you earned it. That every time you preemptively explain yourself to people who haven't asked, you are not being transparent, you are being nervous. And nervousness, no matter how intelligently articulated, is never the language of power. Say what is necessary, then let it stand, without help. There is a misunderstanding that follows this kind of conversation everywhere it goes. People hear indifference, and they think they are being told to become numb, to suppress, to build a wall so thick that nothing gets in and nothing gets out. And they try that, and it works for about 3 weeks, and then something cracks. A rejection, a failure, a betrayal, and everything they tried to suppress comes flooding back, and they are worse off than before. Because repression is not discipline, it is just delayed explosion. True emotional control is not the absence of feeling, it is the mastery of what you do with the feeling. It is the gap between stimulus and response. It is the moment between something happening to you and you deciding what to do about it. That gap, that pause, that breath, that internal stillness is where power lives, not before the feeling. In the gap after it, you are going to feel anger. You are going to feel fear. You are going to feel the burning desire to react, to defend, to retaliate, to collapse into grief, to lash out in the moment when someone has touched the part of you that is still raw. All of that is human. All of that is honest. None of that is weakness. The weakness is not in feeling it. The weakness is in letting it dictate your next move before you have had the chance to make a real decision. Thomas Shelby carried extraordinary grief. He carried the weight of war. He carried trauma that would have broken most people into pieces, visible from across the room. But what made him extraordinary was not the absence of that weight. It was that the weight never appeared on his face at the moment when someone needed him to appear weak. He had learned, through brutal necessity, to process internally what would devastate externally. He felt everything. He showed what was useful to show, and nothing more. You need to build this internal processing room, a space inside yourself where reactions can be received and assessed before they are acted on. Not forever, not endlessly repressed, received, assessed, then released in a form that serves you rather than betrays you. This is not coldness. This is craftsmanship. The craftsman who builds something uses tools precisely. He does not throw the hammer because the nail bent. He adjusts. He tries again. The material doesn't get to see his frustration. It gets to see his result. In practical terms, this means you stop reacting in real time to things that do not require real-time reactions. Someone criticizes you. That doesn't need an immediate response. Someone disrespects you publicly. That doesn't require immediate retaliation. Someone delivers news that feels devastating. That doesn't require you to fall apart in the room where it was delivered. You receive it. You hold it. You walk away. You process it with the depth it deserves. And then, and only then, you decide what, if anything, is worth doing about it. The person who can do this, who can receive impact without immediately transmitting it back outward, is the person that every room adjusts to, because they cannot be read, because they cannot be read, because they cannot be rattled into predictability. And an unreadable, unrattable person is genuinely, functionally dangerous in every room they enter. You have probably met someone in your life who commands attention without trying to command it. Maybe it was a teacher, maybe a mentor, maybe someone you once saw across a room and could not take your eyes off, and you struggled to articulate why. They weren't necessarily the most attractive person there. They weren't the loudest. They weren't performing. There was just something about them that made the room orient toward them like a compass finding north. What you were feeling was presence. Real, full, unhurried presence. And it is rarer than almost any other quality a human being can possess. Presence is not about being physically imposing. It is not about speaking slowly on purpose. It is not about the specific clothes or the deliberate posture or any technique someone might teach you in a video. Those things are the surface of presence. And people who teach only the surface produce people who look like they are trying very hard to look like they are not trying, which is its own form of pathetic performance. Real presence comes from one place and one place only. You are actually here, not partly here. Not here while also managing your anxiety about being here. Not here while also monitoring how you are coming across. Fully, completely, undividedly here. Thomas Shelby was always fully in the room he was in. His mind was not elsewhere. His attention was not split. When he looked at you, he was actually looking at you, with the kind of attention that makes the other person feel simultaneously seen and slightly destabilized. Because being truly seen is unnerving. Most people are used to interacting with the performance other people put out. The moment someone looks past the performance and lands on the thing underneath it, every defense system you have activates. You cannot manufacture this. You can only build it by actually becoming more present. And the way you become more present is by requiring less from the moment you are in. The person who is anxious about how the room is receiving them is not actually in the room. They are in the imaginary room where the room is judging them. The person who is planning what to say next, while someone else is still speaking, is not actually in the conversation. They are in the next conversation, leaving this one unattended. Presence requires that you arrive completely, that you drop the anticipatory management, that you trust yourself enough to respond in real time rather than performing a pre-scripted version of yourself. When you become genuinely present, something happens to the people around you. They slow down. They speak more carefully. They feel like what they are saying actually matters to you. Because it does. Because you are actually there to receive it. And that makes them feel more. It makes them lean in. It creates gravity. Not the fake gravity of performance. The real gravity of a person who is actually, completely, undeniably here. That gravity is power. Quiet. Patient, immovable power. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself, because the room already knows it's in the room. Most people have an identity that is essentially a negotiation, not in the sense that they have sat down and consciously compromised on who they are, but in the functional sense that who they are shifts depending on the room. In front of their boss, they are one person. In front of their friends, they are another. In front of a romantic interest, another. In front of their parents, another. And they have told themselves this is just social intelligence. This is just code switching. This is just flexibility. And some of it is. But most of it isn't. Most of it is a self that has never fully crystallized. A self that is still waiting for external conditions to tell it what it is. A self that is defined primarily by its relationships to other selves, rather than by any fixed internal core. And a self like that, fluid, reactive, contextually defined, cannot project power, because power requires a fixed point, something that does not move when the environment changes, an identity that holds its shape regardless of pressure. Think about what it would feel like to know, not believe, not hope, but know who you are, to have already decided in some previous private moment what you stand for, what you will not do, what kind of person you are intending to be, and to carry that decision into every room you enter, so that the room does not get to make the decision for you. The room does not get to tell you who you are today based on who it needs you to be. You already know. That knowledge arrived before you walked through the door. This is the psychological structure that Thomas Shelby had built, the hard way, through repetition, through surviving circumstances that would have dissolved a less defined self completely. He had been to war. He had seen things that rewired a man at the foundational level, and what came out the other side was not flexible and pleasing and seeking approval. It was fixed. It was decided. It knew exactly what it was and what it was not. And that fixedness, that refusal to be renegotiated by the environment, was the source of the authority that every person in his orbit eventually capitulated to. You need to do this work, the work of deciding, sitting with yourself in whatever private space you have access to, and actually determining, what are my non-negotiables? What lines exist that I will not cross regardless of the social cost? What kind of person am I when no one is watching and nothing is at stake? Because that person, the one who shows up when there is no audience and no reward, that is your actual identity. Everything else is costume. When you have done this work, something permanent changes in how you move through the world. You stop negotiating your self-presentation at the door of every new environment. You stop scanning for cues about who you are supposed to be in this particular room. You simply are what you are. And that consistency, that sameness across contexts, reads as authority to every person who encounters it, because most people are so busy negotiating themselves that they have never met anyone who simply isn't. They don't know what to do with a fixed point, so they orbit it. Here is the version of discipline you have been sold. Wake up at 5. Post is online. Cold shower. Post that too. Make the bed. Photograph it. Read the books. Recommend them publicly. Do the hard things. Make sure the world knows you are doing the hard things. And that will build you. That will forge something real. That will produce a person who is capable of the kind of quiet authority that commands rooms and earns the respect of difficult people. It won't. What it produces is a performer of discipline, a person whose self-regulation is fundamentally tied to external validation, who works out because of what it signals, who reads because of what it says about them, who does hard things primarily in categories where other people can see them doing the hard things. That person has mistaken the performance of growth for growth itself, and those two things are not even distantly related. Real discipline is what you do in the dark, in the specific and invisible places where no one is watching and no one will ever know. The thought you choose not to think because you know it will erode you. The conversation you don't have because you know it will pull you away from who you are becoming. The work you do at 3 in the afternoon when no one asked you to do it, and no one will know you did. The standard you hold yourself to in private that is identical to the standard you hold yourself to in public, because you have decided there is no difference between the two. Thomas Shelby's discipline was not aesthetic. He was not trying to look disciplined. He was disciplined in the specific private machinery of his decision-making, in the planning that happened before anyone else was in the room, in the preparation that meant he was never improvising when improvisation was not the point. The visible composure was the output of invisible labor. You were seeing the result. You were not seeing the hours that built the result, because those hours were not for you. They never were. This is the discipline you are after, the kind with no audience, the kind that is not contingent on recognition, the kind that you would maintain even if it never produced a single visible result. Because you have understood that who you are in the absence of results is who you actually are. And who you actually are is the only thing that eventually determines what the world gives back to you. Do the work no one sees. It becomes the foundation that everyone feels. At some point, and this is guaranteed, someone is going to test you. Not formally, not consciously in most cases, but the test will happen. It happens to every person who begins operating from a place of internal authority rather than social performance, because the people around you have calibrated their relationship with you based on a version of you that sought their approval. And when you stop seeking it, when the dynamic shifts, when you walk in differently and respond differently and carry yourself differently, they don't know what to do with that. And the thing that confused, insecure people do when they don't know what to do is push. They will say something provocative to see if you react. They will dismiss something you've done to see if you defend it. They will test your boundaries in small ways, arriving late, interrupting, questioning your competence, not out of cruelty but out of confusion. They are trying to find the edges of who you now are. They are trying to locate the pressure point that still works, the thing that will get the old you to show back up. And how you respond in those moments, or more precisely, how you don't respond, will determine whether the new dynamic holds or collapses. Here's what Thomas Shelby understood that most people in those situations miss. The test is not about the specific thing being said or done. The test is about whether your internal state changes, whether you get pulled out of your own frequency and into the frequency of the person who is testing you. If they provoke you and you get angry, they've succeeded. If they dismiss you and you scramble to reassert yourself, they've succeeded. If they arrive late and you apologize for your own inconvenience, they've succeeded. Because in each case, what has happened is that your internal state has been rearranged by their external behavior, and that rearrangement is the real loss, not the argument, not the specific confrontation, the loss of internal sovereignty. When you are tested, your response should come from the same place as everything else does now, from the inside out, not from the provocation, not from the need to resolve the discomfort of the moment, from your own assessment of what is true and what is necessary, which sometimes means responding, sometimes means not responding, sometimes means addressing it directly in language that is calm and final and requires no repetition, sometimes means simply continuing to behave exactly as you were behaving before the test arrived, which is often the most devastating response of all, because the person who expected a reaction and received stillness doesn't know where to go next. The disruption they aimed at you has returned to them. They must now decide what to do with the unchanged, unrattled, fully present version of you that absorbed their test and remained completely itself. And that decision almost always ends in a quiet recalibration of the power dynamic, one that never needed to be argued about because it was simply demonstrated. True power was never loud. It never needed to be. The man who commands without commanding, who is obeyed without demanding obedience, who walks into a room and shifts its gravity without saying a word, that man has done the invisible work that most people will never even begin. Thomas Shelby was not born with that power. He forged it in the dark, alone, at a cost most people are not willing to pay. The question is not whether you are capable of it. You are. The question is whether you are willing to stop performing it and start becoming it. By order.